Waycross presents an election forum for state senator from the 9th District. There are 2 candidates running for one open position. The candidates are, in alphabetical order, Catherine D. Ingram, Orlando B. Sonza, Jr.
Welcome to yet another Waycross election forum. This forum is for Ohio State Senator in the 9th District. I'm Dana Gagnon, Government Programming Coordinator for Waycross Community Media, and I have 2 candidates in the studio with me this evening. I have Catherine Ingram and Orlando Sonza. So thank you so much for coming in. We're going to start with each candidate's 2-minute opening statement. But then, if you are watching this live on September 21st, you will be able to email me your questions for the candidates. If you're watching this program live, the address will be at the bottom of your screen. That's live@waycross.org. Now, there's a couple rules for questions. When you send your email, please include your name, street address, and community. I will not say those on the air. We just want to make sure the questions are coming from people actually in the district. Questions must be phrased for all candidates, not targeted at one in particular. So now that we've covered that, let's start with the opening statements. And Catherine, would you begin?
First of all, thank you, Dana, for allowing me to be here today, and thank you for Waycross Media being the servant that you have been over the years as far as making sure that people hear the information from the various candidates. I am Catherine D. Ingram, currently the state representative in the 32nd District here in Ohio. This is my 6th year there. Was previously elected to the school board for some years, have worked in corporate America, have been around for a very long time, a mother, a grandmother, worked with the school system as far as a parent is concerned, as well as that person that is there. Committed to making sure that the voices of our folks who live in our communities is heard, and I've done that for a very long time. I taught at the post-secondary level. When you're around as long as I have been, you get to do a lot of various things in life, and so I think that the work that we do right now is so very important, and so I want to be able to continue to do that in the 9th District Senate seat.
Excellent, thank you. And Orlando.
Thank you, Dana, and thank you to Waycross Media as well. And Representative Ingram, it is good to finally meet you. It's an honor to meet you. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I am not a current elected official. I am a husband and a father of 4 kids, 7, 4, 2, and a 7-month-old, 2 girls and 2 boys. I grew up in the Philippines. I'm an immigrant and moved here when I was 3 with my mother, my father, my older sister. Grew up in New Jersey. I think to this point in my life, the single greatest regret I have is not growing up in Cincinnati to say which high school I went to. So I don't have that accolade, but my wife does. So Jessica, my wife, she grew up here in Cincinnati. She went to Winton Woods, and we met at West Point. We both were at the academy together. We commissioned together, and then after the academy, we decided to go home, her home, that has become my home, our home together. And this is where we're raising a family. The reason why I decided to run for this state Senate seat is I think, along with a lot of other Americans, I was just tired of the division, the disrespect, the lack of being able to, it's one thing to say you reach across the aisle, it's another thing to actually do it. So I decided to step up, and I determined that the best way to serve my family at this point in my life is to also serve my community at large, and that is Greater Cincinnati here in this state Senate seat. So it's a pleasure and honor to be here, to answer questions, to dialogue with Representative Ingram, and I look forward to it. Thank you, Dana.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And those are the opening statements, which means now we are ready to start taking emailed questions if you have any. We do have some emailed questions, so I'll put mine aside for a moment and we'll get right to those. We have a question from Judith, who lives in Hamilton County. And Judith would like to know, how can you protect reproductive rights at the state level? This time we're going to start with you, Mr. Sonza. And we'll do 2 minutes for this question.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the question, Judith. I will, and I know that question directly touches the Dobbs decision and the overturning of Roe v. Wade. I will first say that I am, I think, also tired, along with a lot of people, with the dichotomy that we've forced in the discussion between pro-life and pro-choice, the black and white. It's a complicated issue. And I'll say that I think abortion is horrible. I would hope that no woman ever has to go through something so traumatic. But if a woman decides to exercise a legal right to have an abortion, I firmly believe she should not be criminalized for it, nor should she be put to public shame. So how do we protect reproductive rights in our state level? It's to not forget that there's two lives we're talking about, the life of a child and the life of the woman, and the support that that woman gets when she's going through a very difficult time in her life, facing a difficult decision with a lot of pressure. I think the way we support that woman is to make sure that our community gives her the adequate prenatal care, before that, the adequate support care in deciding what she decides to do. And then beyond that, it's supporting her at postnatal care. And beyond that, it's supporting raising up a child, if she's raising up a child. I think all that comes together. It's not a siloed issue. It's very complex. And I think there needs to be discussion across all areas of healthcare, not just one specific one. Thank you.
And the same question for you.
Thank you very much. When we start to talk about reproductive rights for women, the reality is that we're talking about a continuum of health care. A decision about an abortion with the overturning of Roe v. Wade is a discussion that should take place between a woman and her doctor, and therefore that decision be made. Right now in the state of Ohio, unfortunately, the bill that was passed, the heartbeat bill, was held up by the judge here in Hamilton County because it cannot be enacted right away. The difficulty is that unfortunately some of us think that this is just about a woman having an abortion and we're dictating that you can't do that, we've criminalized it, and we can say all we want to that we don't want that to happen. Unfortunately, I've watched my colleagues across the aisle vote and the way they voted. And unfortunately, we're not talking about just being able to talk about foundations of the family. Women, for the most part, are foundations of the family. We need to make sure that they are able to have health care to the extent that if they need a doula to help birth the baby, we talk a good game, but here in Ohio, we're nowhere near the top of taking care of mothers. Black maternal health is a real issue. Maternal health and infant mortality is probably one of the worst things that we have against us here in Ohio. My reality is that it's more than talking. It's about getting to the work, and reproductive rights is so important.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much. We are getting in, let's see, we are getting in some more questions, and I want to make sure that I ask them all. We have a question from Pleasant Ridge. If you support Ohio issue 1 and 2, and of course has not spelled those out, but I wonder if you have a statement on those, or if I can look for a little bit. I don't want to just go from my memory to give you information on those.
Okay, because there are difficulty to get them mixed up.
Right,
We have to pay attention to what they really say.
Exactly.
You know, here's the problem that we have with bills and issues. Sometimes the language sounds cool and beneficial and all those other things, and the reality is it's very difficult for our Ohioans to survive. One of them, 1 or 2, actually includes, when we started talking about, I think it's 2, about citizens voting. The reality is that's already in our Constitution. What it does do, it allows for, it talks about 17-year-olds not being able to vote in the primary, despite the fact that they will be able to vote that November, or turn 18 by that November. Shame on us. Another way to eliminate that primary vote, which is important for that general election to take place. It's all disguised. Unfortunately, the Secretary of State wouldn't change the language. despite the fact that the full board was not in favor of it. But it's just another wolf in sheep's clothing.
And I'm going to pause. I want to make sure I ask your question completely in Pleasant Ridge. And yes, I just wanted to clarify. Issue 2 is the citizen voting requirement. Issue 1, I believe, is setting bail. So I want to make sure
that the
you
person
both
has to be,
yes.
that the individual has to be not a threat.
Yes.
And the question becomes, what is that?
What is that? So I want to make sure you both have equal chance to respond to that. I will go ahead, now that we've defined the issues, and also so that the viewers know what issues we're talking about, because they may not have that in front of them. I will go ahead and let you, Mr. Sonza, talk about both of those issues, and then we'll come back, because you may have, we didn't talk about both of them there. And I will go ahead and set a timer. We'll say 2 minutes, because there's 2 issues there.
Okay, great. So first, I'll touch on what the representative spoke to about issue 2. But let's not forget also what the language is explicitly going to say on the ballot. It's going to ensure that illegal immigrants are not granted the right to vote in Ohio. I think personally that that's a no-brainer, right? Because now, talking from personal experience, knowing my dad being naturalized, or knowing friends that have become naturalized citizens, the greatest right that they internalize at the moment of getting naturalized is their ability to vote as a United States citizen. That should be preserved. Why? Because our nation is founded on this principle that if you are a citizen of this great country, you have that right to participate in our democratic process. So I firmly support issue 2 as it's written that way, is to make sure that it's United States citizens that get to vote in our elections. And the process that they do that, whether natural born or naturalized, is the way that they get then that right. Now, to issue 1, I like to think things in terms of anecdote and to really see it play out. Issue 1 really stems from a January decision of the Ohio Supreme Court that it had to do with removing public safety, community safety as a factor in determining bail. So a prime example that we can look to is about a month ago, the 9-person terrible shooting that happened in OTR. As that case stands, when those 2 suspects, those 2 defendants are standing before a judge, that judge cannot factor in community safety when setting their bail. And I think that that's ludicrous. Why? Because bail is supposed to ensure that these defendants show up at trial. So issue 1 makes sure that community safety, public safety is put in back as a factor for our judges in determining bail.
Excellent.
And I support it.
Thank you. And now, because we didn't really clearly get to answer,
Sure.
I would like to give you 1 more minute, because you talked about issue 2, but not issue 1, I think.
Thank you so much for that. And of course, I want to make sure that when you talk about, I just want to comment on the issue 2 piece. The reality is that issue 2, despite how it sounds, the fact that Ohio citizens, and this is the Ohio Constitution we're talking about, not the United States Constitution. The Ohio Constitution already says that citizens should vote. What you need to pay attention to is that there are other phrases in there that will allow time not to be changed from 30 days for early registration, things of that nature that can be construed as, well, maybe the legislature can make that change and make it 40 days out, or whatever, 50 days out, 60 days out. As far as issue 1 is concerned, public safety and the safety that, or the risk that they will give if we give them bail, is something that those judges already take into consideration as to far as when they set the bail, it's based on what the incident is, what the crime is, et cetera, et cetera. We don't need to add something else. And of course, the real issue is cash bail, and for simple things anyway. But this is just another way to keep people incarcerated unfairly.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for emailing in your question. If you are also watching this live on September 21st, you can email me your question here in the studio, live at waycross.org. Remember, questions have to be phrased for both candidates, not targeted to one. And what I'd like to do now is actually just take, let's get that timer set back up. Let's just take a minute to ask each of you what is unique about your skills and experience that you would bring to this role. And we are going to start with you, Ms. Ingram.
Thank you so much.
2 minutes, I'm sorry.
Thank you so much. Because of my breadth of information and my knowledge and skills, I've done more than one thing in my life, and I have a different perspective about various things. Education, what's happening there as far as the teaching, workforce development, as far as the infrastructure is concerned. I was the Minority Business Enterprise mentoring program executive director through the Chamber of Commerce. I taught at the post-secondary level, so a lot of those things that I have done in my life. And I'm one of those people that I'm committed. Excuse me, you'll find that people like to talk about whether or not you're going to be there. You'll find that even though a public records request was made about my attendance, what they found is that I was 100% in 132nd GA, 100% in 133rd GA, and of the 43 meetings that's been held so far in the 134th, I've made all but one, and that one I was in Florida at an education conference watching session on my phone. So I'm committed, and that's very, very important to getting this work done.
Excellent. And I have the same question about your skills and experience that you would bring to the position for you.
Thanks, Dana. I'll first say that it's one thing to show up, it's another thing to do something when you show up, right? So I think what makes me qualified for the position of state senator is the fact that I have grown up to be a problem solver. My parents ingrained in me three things. One is to work hard, two is to get a sound education, and three is to respect people in the process. That second piece of education, getting to West Point was one thing, but excelling in the class was another thing. It was foregoing things just be able to make sure that I get out to be the best Army officer I could be. And when my military career was cut short due to an injury, I made sure that I could provide still for my family the best way that I could be. So I went back to school. Went back to school for accounting as a political science major. What do you do with a poli-sci major? Nothing. So I went back to school for accounting. Why? Because I wanted to understand the language of business. And I wanted to seek it out in what I thought was the best way possible, and that's through tax. So I got a master's at tax at University of Cincinnati and then became a CPA here in Cincinnati. I worked for Ernst & Young as a senior tax accountant. And talk about problem solving. When you are faced with how to lower someone's taxable income legally, but to take advantage of every single deduction or credit that they're entitled to, that takes problem solving. And I think as a state senator especially, good tax policy leads to good social policy. And so I would like to use that specific part of my brain to make sure that we get good social policy in Ohio through good tax policy. And the third area, I think tax then got me really interested in just law in general. So I went back to school as a father of 4 kids and pursued law at Georgetown Law. Lived in DC for a bit with my wife and young kids, and now currently work at the prosecutor's office. Why? Because I want to see the justice system play out before my eyes so that it can then equip me as a state senator when it comes to justice reform. So the breadth of experience, yes, but the depth also.
Great. Thanks. Both of you have been really great at fitting a lot into your time, and I really appreciate that. That lets us get to the most number of questions. And I want to ask you, I have been hearing, a question I've been getting from young professionals in this area is that they'd like to stay in Cincinnati, but they cannot find affordable housing that matches starting salaries. So is there something that you think the state can do to make housing more accessible for them? And I was keeping a checklist, and now I've lost it. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Sonza.
Thanks, Dana. That's a great question. Why? Because it touches on my favorite area, and that's tax. So I think a great area to make sure that we solve the problem of low affordable housing, and I'll even couple it with the imbalance of rental properties in greater Cincinnati with a decrease of home ownership. One way to do that is through great tax policy. So an incentive program to then generate more home ownership and then be able to then counteract the imbalance of high rent. That's one area, but I'll even expand it to not just tax policy. There's a Senate bill right now being offered or was offered by Senator Bill Blessing. And it touches on the fact that we have all these outside limited liability companies external to Ohio coming into Cincinnati and gobbling up all of these foreclosed homes. And they could do it fast and they could do it quickly because they buy homes in cash and they buy it in bulk. Well, his bill, although not perfect, sets to give a 45-day window where tenants, nonprofits, municipalities, or owner-occupants the first right of refusal, meaning that for the first 45 days when a house goes in foreclosure, they get the first right whether they want to buy it or not. Then it comes, if no one wants to buy it out of that listed group of people, then these companies will come in, right? Because although something might be good for business, it may not be healthy for the state. So we have to make sure that we balance what is good for business, because we don't want to stifle that. That's what grows our economy, but something that's also healthy, not just for our business owners, but for the people that live and breathe in Ohio. So I think those two areas, I won't bother you in the depth of the tax, but tax policy, but also bills that are currently right now that should be tweaked, have the potential to solve that problem.
Okay. Thank you very much. And Ms. Ingram.
Thank you very much. I think that there are a couple of bills that are there. One is, of course, the bill that would allow a couple or person to be able to have what they call a savings plan, saving towards a down payment. And therefore, that would act like the 529 plan, which would be like saving for your child's college tuition. You would be able to save those dollars and be able to spend them on your down payment. That's very important for us to do. The interesting thing when you start to talk about affordable housing and equitable housing, even with the bill that was just discussed, first right of refusal means nothing if the people who get that first right still don't have the credit rating and the ability to make those down payments. So that's what we need to be looking at, is what is affordable housing, what is equitable housing, which is what we, as I am a realtor, what we call it in our environment is because we're looking at extremely low income folks compared to people that are just at their first time entry level position that need to be able to afford housing. Is it equitable housing? Do we need to make sure that we have other plans as far as tax credits, et cetera, that we'll be able to get to for those folks to be able to make those purchases? And home ownership is lopsided as to far as who owns property. We just have certain groups of people that don't own their properties. And unfortunately, when we talk about economic development, sometimes we do leave some of those folks behind. So it's not just affordable housing, because the question becomes affordable for whom? And we want to make sure that we're looking at all those individuals who live here in Ohio and want to stay. And therefore, we do things like cut the ribbon on the trails, and we lure people in so that when they get to Ohio, they want to stay, and we want to make sure that they can afford to stay here.
Okay, great. Well, we are coming very close to the end of our time, and there's a lot of topics that I'm really hoping to squish in. Let's see if we can do a 1-minute answer, even though this is not a 1-minute topic. But I want to ask about education, and I want to ask how you think the state can assist struggling school districts. I'll start with you, Ms. Ingram. I know it's a big topic, but let's see if there's something, just a little something that we can let folks know.
It's huge. I think that what has to happen and what should have happened and could have happened for many years now is that we should focus on the public system that was put in place to educate all of our children who unfortunately could not go to other systems because of affordability and things of that nature. So we have to make sure that education is affordable for all of our children, not because of where they live, because of their tax base. Because, as we know, with desegregation, those things went out the window when we had white flight. So we have to make sure that we're paying attention to how we're educating our children and making sure that the funding is there. Does it always take more money? I don't think so. But we have to make sure that we are adding those resources that those families need. I mean, we could get all the way back to the mother who needs health care and somewhere to live, so affordable housing and all those other things that tie right into the education system and the affordability of our kids getting that access to the academic success.
And now, Mr. Sonza, it's your chance to try a 1-minute answer to a very big question.
Sure. I love this question because I have skin in the game with 4 young kids that are growing up to be educated in what we hope is going to be the best educational route for them. So when it comes to that question, I see it as how do we best empower and equip our parents to make the best educational decision for their kids? Because they know their kids. We know our kids better than most, or we would hope, right? So I think one of the best ways to do that is make sure that whatever decision they make for their kids, they then have the proper resources to then follow that child wherever they go. I agree with the representative that our public school system should always be, it was and should always be the first best choice that we have. Why? Because our tax dollars are going to pay for them. But if they're not for that child, what then? We can't say that now, sorry, you can't succeed in public schools. No, but we have charter schools, we have home schools and private schools. How do we equip that? One of the bills being offered is the backpack bill, that the resources of the state then follows the child wherever the parent decides. That, you know, to a lot of people are called school choice. I would be for that because it best empowers the parent.
And that's fantastic. Thank you. That is time, and I'm just making sure I get this set for the next spot. Believe it or not, we are so down to the end, and what I'd really want to do is to make sure you each have just 1 minute for our closing statement. We started with your opening statement, so we're going to start with Mr. Sonza's closing statement. And if you can do just a lightning speed closing statement,
Sure.
I think we can squish it in.
Sure. Well, I just want to say thank you to the viewers that at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night are tuning into a state senate race. Kudos to you. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here and really just share my heart as a father, as a husband, with a background that may not stretch as long as the good representative, but just seeks to problem solve for our community. So I'd ask for your vote, because at the end of the day on November 8th, or if you participate in early voting, this year we have an opportunity to not focus on left or right. We have an opportunity to do right for our community. And so would you do right with me, and let's solve problems together. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. And now, Ms. Ingram.
Thank you so much. First of all, I thank you again for allowing me to be here today. I think it's really very important, and I want to talk about, when people talk about when you show up, the idea is that it's not a matter of just showing up, it's a matter of what you do. I've worked very hard for a very long time in this community, and you could go anywhere and ask if indeed someone knows my work or what I've done, and they'd be able to tell you so. The reality is that yes, I'm a mother, as of how I got to the school board when I was there, and a grandmother right now, and I have students that are in the public system. And when we start to talk about various things about what needs to be done, we need a voice that is well beyond one side or the other and making that decision. And so my reality is I have worked across the aisle. I will continue to try to work across the aisle, and that not just because I've been there already, but because I do believe that my perspective and my knowledge, my expertise allows me to be there and continue to be there for the citizens of the 9th District here in Ohio.
Well, I want to thank both of you for being here this evening. That means you are accessible for people to watch and just hear your answers to these questions. I want to thank you for watching, and for those of you who emailed in your questions, thank you so much. If you need more information before you vote in the upcoming election, you can watch all of our election forum programs online at www.waycross.tv. You can also go to the Hamilton County Board of Elections website, and there you can make sure you are registered. You can look at a sample ballot. You can find out where your voting location is. And registration ends October 11th, so there's still time to go there and check your registration. Early voting begins October 12th, and make sure you vote on November 8th.
Waycross takes no position on candidates or issues. We conduct these forums so that our viewers may be better informed voters for the November 8th elections.